Hello, and welcome to Raising Daniels, the podcast where nervous system science meets biblical truth and where the healing of the parent becomes the inheritance of the child. I'm so glad you're here today. Before we begin, I want to remind you that this podcast is for educational and faith-based encouragement purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental support, therapy, or medical advice. This episode is for the parent who keeps showing up, the one who serves, gives, helps, carries, prays, organizes, supports, and holds everything together. The one who is tired, but keeps going anyway. The one who says, I'm just being faithful. But underneath that faithfulness is exhaustion, resentment, numbness, and a nervous system that has been running on empty for far too long. Today's episode is called Running on Empty and calling it faithfulness. Because sometimes what looks like spiritual devotion is actually survival mode, wearing a Christian label. In many Christian spaces, we unintentionally celebrate exhaustion. We admire the person who is always available, the parent who never says no, the volunteer who serves every opportunity, the mother who carries everyone else's needs, the father who works endlessly to provide. And somewhere along the way, we begin to believe that being depleted is proof of being devoted. But exhaustion is not always evidence of obedience. Sometimes it's evidence that we've ignored the limits God built into our humanity. Your nervous system was not designed for constant output. It was designed for rhythm, work and rest, giving and receiving, engagement and recovery. When we override those rhythms for too long, our bodies begin to compensate. We become irritable, emotionally reactive, numb, forgetful, short-tempered with the people we love the most, and often we spiritualize it. We say, I'm just pouring out. But God never asked us to pour from an empty cup. One of the clearest biblical examples is Elijah. In 1 Kings 18, Elijah experiences a powerful victory. God answers by fire. The prophets of Baal are defeated. It's a mountaintop moment of faith. But immediately after that victory, Elijah runs. He becomes afraid. He isolates himself. And in 1 Kings 19, he sits under a broom tree and asks God to take his life. This is not a man lacking faith. This is a faithful man whose nervous system is exhausted. And I love what God does next. He does not begin with correction. He begins with care. He lets Elijah sleep. He provides food. He gives him water. And then Elijah sleeps again. Before God gives Elijah a new assignment, he restores Elijah's body. That matters. Sometimes the most spiritual next step is not doing more. It's resting enough to hear God clearly again. Quickly, before we continue, if today's episode encourages you, make sure you're connected to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on so you don't miss a future episode. And if you know another parent who could benefit from this message, please share it with them. Don't forget to check the description below for any new free resources, coaching programs, or courses if you want to do a deeper healing and nervous system work with me. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Let's talk honestly about survival mode. When you've lived in chronic stress for a long time, your nervous system adapts. You may become highly productive, highly responsible, highly available, but underneath that productivity is often fear. Fear of disappointing people, fear of being seen as selfish, fear of not being enough, fear that everything will fall apart if you stop. So you keep going. And because you're serving others, it feels righteous. But ask yourself, can I rest without guilt? Can I say no without anxiety? Can I receive help? Can I be loved even when I'm not producing? If the answer is no, your exhaustion may not be faithfulness. It may be a survival strategy. Jesus was fully devoted to his Father's will. And yet, Jesus rested. He withdrew from the crowds. He went away to pray. He slept in a boat during a storm. He did not heal every person in Israel. He did not meet every demand. He was faithful without being frantic. In Matthew 11, verse 28, Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." Notice, he does not say, "Come to me and I will give you more assignments." He says, "I will give you rest." Rest is not the reward for finishing everything. Rest is part of walking with Jesus. When we're depleted, we often become the version of ourselves we don't want our children to inherit. We snap quickly, we correct harshly, we withdraw emotionally. We feel guilty afterward, but then we try harder. And the cycle repeats. Our children may not understand nervous system language, but they feel our emotional availability. They know when we're being present. They know when we're running on fumes. And here's the hard truth. If our children only experience us when we're tired, stressed, and overwhelmed, they may grow up believing that faithfulness means self-neglect. And that's not the legacy we want to leave. Instead of asking, how much more can I do? Ask, what is God actually asking me to carry? Not every opportunity is an assignment. Not every need is your responsibility. Discernment is part of faithfulness. Take 5 minutes today with no productivity attached. No phone, no task, no fixing, just breathe. Notice your body. Notice your thoughts. Notice how uncomfortable stillness might feel. That discomfort is information. It may reveal how long you've been living in constant output. One of the greatest gifts you can give your children is permission to be human. Let them hear you say, "I need a moment to calm down. I'm going to rest for a few minutes. I can't do everything today. God didn't ask me to carry this alone." That is not weakness. That is modeling healthy faith. Imagine raising children who learn that faithfulness is not frantic, that obedience is not burnout, that serving God does not require abandoning themselves. Imagine children who grow up seeing a parent who loves deeply, serves faithfully, and also rests without shame. That kind of parent teaches courage because rested people can respond instead of react. Rested people can listen. Rested people can discern. Rested people can stand firm. And that's the kind of parent who raised Daniels. If you're tired today, I want you to hear this clearly. You do not have to earn rest. You do not have to prove your devotion through depletion. God is not glorified by your collapse. He is glorified when you walk in the rhythm He created. Faithfulness is not doing everything. Faithfulness is doing what God asked you to do in the strength He provides. Before we finish, I want to leave you with one question. Where have I been calling exhaustion faithfulness? And what might God be inviting me to release? Sit with that this week. Pray about it. And if the answer is rest, receive it as an act of trust. Thank you for joining me on Raising Daniels. And if this episode encourages you, share it with another parent who may be carrying too much. And remember, a rested parent is often a more available one, because this is where nervous system science meets biblical truth, and where the healing of one parent becomes the inheritance of their child. Until next time, keep raising Daniels.